What I would suggest is look at the bigger picture while not losing sight of what needs to be delivered tomorrow. And it's a very difficult skill to master. So when you look at the bigger picture, you end up understanding the value of everything that gets done right now. So it gives you that motivation. But if you lose sight of what needs to be delivered tomorrow, then that bigger picture never gets complete. So from an advice standpoint, for a product manager, understanding why a particular thing is being built and how it fits in with the larger product is extremely important. But it's also very important to understand what is the hardcore limit of a person when it comes to building, because a product manager doesn't code. A product manager understands the people who are coding, right? So if you lose sight of that, then the product is lost. I've made that mistake in the past. So
Hello everyone, and that is my guest Summit Nayak. He's the co-founder of Ekank. They are building a storytelling platform that aims to promote art, culture, history and heritage. In this episode, he talks about how they got this off the ground, talks about ignoring the experts who told him not to build this product because it wasn't cool enough. But since launching, they have 13.8 million monthly active users and have raised a cool $1 million in funding. So he talks about building the community, gives thoughts on product management, talks about building a niche product and why they are different from other platforms, talks about the creator economy, talks about scaling too fast in the early days, and finally he shares his favourite stories and much, much more. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello Summit, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Neil, for having me.
Awesome stuff. Please tell the listeners what you're building.
We're building a storytelling platform. We're effectively building a culture company. Us as humans, we talk about culture a lot. We're really proud of our culture. But if you look at the startup ecosystem, right, globally, you have people solving your problems in 10 minutes, people making sure that you can transact as seamlessly as possible. But there is nobody who's changing the way culture is made accessible to masses.
What have we actually built then?
Actually built a storytelling platform called thisday.app, wherein you can open the platform. There is an Android app as well, which we recently launched. You can just read stories from different cultures, from different times, from different eras. Our vision is to make history, art, culture, and heritage accessible globally. And that's what we are embarking on. That's what we are doing trying to do one day at a time.
Obviously, people can read books, blogs, YouTube videos, etc. What kind of problem were you solving there?
A book is 600 pages.
Yeah.
A blog is a couple of thousand words. A YouTube video is 10 minutes long. In today's era of declining attention span, if you're trying to make something accessible, you don't write a 600 pages book on it. You try to make sure that people can rather digest that story, people can digest that information in the most seamless way possible. That's the reason why TikTok grew up. TikTok, just blew up, right? Because it was just 10 seconds. It was very short format. We're not saying that we're making a TikTok or a TikTok clone or of that sort, but what we are trying to do is we're trying to make culture accessible through short format storytelling. We don't have anything that is greater than 1200 words or greater than 2 minutes on our platform. We don't want people, because somebody who's that interested in, let's say, reading a book about a particular culture, that person is going to find a way to do it. And our target audience isn't that. Target audience is that remaining, let's say, 99% of the population on the planet, which doesn't have the time, or rather that population just wants stories to be served to them in the most seamless way possible.
And where did the original idea came from? What was the light bulb moment behind this?
So my co-founder Chetan and I, we've known each other for 7 years now. This is the third startup that we're part of. And we've traveled a lot together over these past 7 years. We've gone to various places in India, outside India as well. And every time we visited a place, what we were interested about was the story of that place. We did not want to just go and visit a monument without knowing what the story behind it is. If you look at any of these older monuments in the country, there is a story behind why a particular thing was created or architected in a particular way. What we wanted to do was we wanted to make this accessible. We wanted to make sure that if there are, let's say, 1,000 odd stories outside in a particular village, or let's say in a particular region, then how do we get those stories out to public, to masses? And that's where the idea originated from. I am not a good storyteller, but I love listening to stories. Chetan comes from the background wherein, his community has so many interesting stories to tell, but that community has also been stereotyped in a particular way. But there are a lot of other stories which nobody knows about. So he's the kind of person who wants to tell all of these stories. So that's where the match was made, wherein I wanted to listen to stories. He was the one who wanted to tell stories. And we just said, why not do it? Why not build a platform so that people from all over the world can just come in and tell the stories around history, art, culture, and heritage. And it's a niche, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a niche.
Yeah.
It's It's a niche which has minimal distraction. For example, if you were to tell stories about history, art, culture on Instagram, a user is going to be distracted by gym videos, by funny memes, by XYZ other things, right? So the attention span is going to be very minimal there. In our case, our platform has none of such digital distractions. So if a user comes on the platform for, let's say, 10 minutes in a week, those 10 minutes are very focused. And that's what we are building. That's the kind of audience and that's the kind of attention that we want every story to have.
How are things going then? Can you share some stats, in terms of downloads when you first started, how many users, how many stories you got in the app, etc.?
Sure. So we launched in the month of Feb 2021.
Yep.
What we wanted to do was we just wanted to get our web platform live, and we just wanted to tell stories about what happened on this day in the past. It's very simple, very easy to understand. Today is, let's say, 16th of April. What happened on 16th of April in the past? It gives a very good anchor point for people to kind of just focus on stories, read, enjoy, go away. We don't want anyone to log in. We don't want anyone to get notifications. None of that, none of those shenanigans on the platform. In less than 8 months, we were at 5 million monthly active users on the platform. Last month, in March, we closed with 13.8 million monthly active users.
Wow.
Who ended up spending close to 74 million minutes on the platform. And mind you, this is a platform which is only for reading yet. We haven't even added audio podcasts. We haven't even added video content yet.
What do you think about what do you think about those stats then? Is that what you wanted? Is that were you surprised by that?
Yeah. So we were very we're not surprised because we knew that people want to spend time consuming such stories. But just the sheer enormity of the number was something that was surprising to us. We see around 48% of the users coming back month on month. If you look at the overall pool of, let's say, 13 million users, 48% is a huge number. And again, I'm repeating that we have not sent a single notification. We haven't sent a single, let's say, a single email or any kind of a push for the user to go back to the platform looking for a particular story. So that's the kind of user acquisition that we have built. And we have a pool of creators, we have a pool of storytellers as well. Our storytellers right now are invite only, because we understand that the moment you open the platform for everyone, moderation becomes a huge pain. And a lot of platforms have platforms who are extremely good, they went down because of the declining quality of content on the platform. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that moderation and storytelling on the platform is extremely sorted and streamlined before we let anybody else join the platform from the perspective of a storyteller.
Yeah. Let's talk about the early days again. How did you get this off the ground in terms of the research and in terms of the custom development? Did you speak to customers?
So effectively, Chetan is a hardcore techie. I mean, he's been in this field for over 10 years now. He's built products that have been used by millions of users. I mean, tens of millions of users in the past. So from a technical standpoint, it wasn't a challenge for us. But from the perspective of understanding what the market requires, or rather what people would want to read more about, was where we spent a couple of initial months trying to figure out what kind of stories are going to work with audiences. When we initially started, our stories were more like essays. While somebody who's interested in a particular domain, you would love to read an essay about it. But if you're not interested in the domain, that essay becomes very boring. For example, let's say if you're interested in finance, you can read a newsletter from Net Interest, which is a financial newsletter. It's very good. It's very long format. But if you're not interested in finance, you will find it very boring. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to make history, art, and culture fun. So that's why we talked to a lot of people. We read a lot of books, by the way. And we figured out that storytelling has to be on point. Your research could be amazingly well, but if your storytelling isn't on point, it becomes extremely boring. And that's what took the initial couple of months. Then we were actually very lucky to find a set of initial creators, around 11 such folks, who wanted to tell such stories, and that too in an amazing way. They could research, they could go in depth, read books, and then take out stories that were just captivating in nature. And that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted on the platform. We wanted each story to be engaging. We wanted each story to be fun and short. And another thing that we realized was that history and culture, they are limitless in nature. If I were to talk about, let's say, fictional categories, you would have, crime, thriller, drama, romance, erotica. Those are the primary categories which exist when it comes to fiction. But when you talk about non-fiction, which is specifically history, art, culture, and heritage, you can have a limitless number of categories. For example, you can have sports as a category which has so many interesting stories in the past. You can talk about cricket, and that in itself has so many interesting stories, so many sessions, so many amazing matches that people who are passionate about cricket, they would just go down the rabbit hole and keep on consuming those stories. And that's the reason why, reason why Harsha Bhogle is such an amazing commentator, because he doesn't tell you facts, he tells you stories. And people are captivated every time he comes on, every time we hear his voice when he's commentating on a match.
Mm-hmm. What mistakes did you make in the early days, looking back now?
From a mistake standpoint, we've done, the classic mistake of trying to scale too much too fast. And that's how the entire moderation part comes into play, right? So once we thought that we had something going on, we just thought, let's scale up. Let's have 100 odd creators on the platform and ask each one of them to write stories, amazing stories, and scale it up as we want. But what happens is that if you scale up this fast, there is no sense of community that you're able to build. And culture, heritage, this is something that requires a community. You cannot do it without a community. And it's true for other creator economies as well. Let's say if you talk about gaming is vastly led by a very close-knit community of people. So that was one of the mistakes that we made, which we are now solving by focusing on the community. We're focusing on building a community of readers, building a community of creators, building a community of loyal, let's say, listeners. And just making sure that that's strong.
Yes. So how are you building that community then? Because we are relatively a new company. So obviously, how are you doing that?
So we went to JLF, Jaipur Literature Festival this year, which is, let's say, the largest gathering of culture-minded people in India. And it happens once a year. So we met up with all of these prominent authors, prominent storytellers around these fields, and we are trying to get them on board to either talk, either contribute, and also do a lot of events with them. Plus, one of the core aspects of community building is to let people tell stories to each other. What's happening right now is why this conversation is interesting, because I'm telling the story to you. If I were not, and every YouTuber tells a story to his or her followers, not to the vast, infinite number of people available on the internet. And we want to make this community by making sure that all of our storytellers are closely knit. They understand the story that the other person is trying to tell. And that's what needs to be replicated at, let's say, 100 million MAU number. And that's how the community gets built. We're planning on doing a lot of events. We're planning on doing a lot of gamification as well when it comes to storytelling. And that's what's going to crack the entire market.
Mm-hmm. Give me an example of that then, gamification then.
So there have been multiple research papers that have been written about gamification in journalism. So what happens is gamification works. It's a very complicated topic though. Let me give you a simple example. So when you play a game, you know that, okay, after you, let's say, reach a certain level, a certain set of quests are going to get unlocked. Or let's say after you after you open a particular door, you're going to find a certain set of enemies that you need to battle.
Mm-hmm.
So gamification is essentially a combination of that suspense. It is a combination of that, it's a combination of that sense of achievement. And it's a combination of that team morale.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we are trying to build when it comes to storytelling. How do we make it more rewarding for everybody, for every storyteller who's out there? How do we make it more rewarding for every person who's reading the story? And how do we make sure that they feel that intent to make sure culture becomes accessible for them?
Cool.
That's what we're doing. I was saying I can't give you the details of how we are going to do it, because that's it's kind of a proprietary thing that we are doing. It has not been done before in the culture domain, but it is something that is extremely exciting, and we're really, really, passionate about getting that live in the next, couple of months or so.
Okay. So in the early days, did you actually try and seek external advice? Did you go to the experts?
We did. William Dalrymple was one of the first folks that we talked to. We also talked to a couple of professors from the domain of history and culture. And what we realized was that there is this academic elite when it comes to culture. These people have knowledge which is way beyond what we can even think of. But when it comes to making it accessible to the masses, that's where everything, kind of just dampens down. And we talked to all of these folks. We wanted to understand their inputs on what storytelling should be like, what topics or what eras should we cover. And that's how we, started focusing on different eras and different topics. We do not want to get bogged down by a certain domain, or rather, let's say a certain period in history, and then just lose sight of everything else that happened before or after that. So we talked to William Dalrymple. We've had chat with other folks as well who have written stories in this field. We've had a chat with a certain set of advisors as well, been dear friends, and they gave us advice as to how we need to grow in terms of the metrics that we need to focus on, and what kind of metrics would probably be the best possible judge of the business that we are trying to build.
Mm-hmm. Did anyone say, look, don't do this, rubbish at whatever?
Oh, a lot of people.
Yeah. Why were they saying that then?
Because culture is a niche, and it's not cool, and it's not crypto and Web 3.0.
Not cool.
I mean, it's not cool, right? So you have a generation of folks building blockchain-based technologies, and then Chetan and I, we have between us, we have product building, tech building, and business building capabilities, right? And a proven track record. So a lot of our advisors who did not support this, or rather they were like, why not spend your time building something which is more required in the market, or rather something that has a higher ROI. So yeah.
How did you deal with that then? The experts, or the so-called experts, are telling you not to do this.
You ignore them.
Ignore them. Okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do, right? So otherwise, everybody's going to say that. It's the same set when we're also raising funds, right? So a lot of investors are going to show support in you, and we raised $1 million seed in Jan, and we're really thankful to everybody who's decided to partner with us in this journey. But there were a lot of people who did not partner, right? They were skeptical about what we were trying to build. Some people just straight off said that this is not going to work. We're like, thanks a lot, but we'll see.
And here you are today. What's the business model? What's the business model behind it? Is it a free app?
It's very everything is free for the end user. See, when you're trying to make something accessible globally, you don't ask people to pay. It's similar to what Google does, right? So Google makes internet accessible globally. Without Google, your website is still going to exist, but finding a website is going to be very difficult, right? And Google is free for everyone. They haven't asked anyone to pay yet. So we're going to do the exact same thing. There are going to be ads on the platform, and we're going to earn from ads. We're going to do a revenue share with all of our creators. So similar to what happens on YouTube, wherein a creator ends up getting, let's say, 50 to 60% of the ad revenue. It's the same on our platform. Somebody who's a storyteller, doesn't matter whether the person is a visual storyteller or, let's say, a text storyteller, that person is going to end up earning a lot from our platform. And we're going to pass on that revenue because we want culture to grow sustainably. And the only way to make it sustainable is to make sure that it has a never-ending revenue source. And that's the business model, ads. We're not thinking of subscriptions right now, but in future, depending on how things go, we might have subscriptions, but then that will only be for a very specific, let's say, pool of storytellers or a pool of content or newsletters or something like that.
Just talk about the creator economy and content marketing industry in India. This must be huge now.
It's huge.
It seems that this is now a respectable and proper. You can make a full-time living out of this.
Yeah, I mean, after YouTube creators, right? So you look at Bhuvan Bam, you look at Ashish Chanchalani, you have all of these comedians, you have all of these creators on YouTube who've done amazingly well for themselves just by following their passion. Now, it's the same with Instagram as well. The influencer economy, the overall creator economy that is booming, it's just unparalleled. Instagram recently launched a couple of features just to support this economy, and so did Facebook, which is on the platform facebook.com. And even YouTube is ramping up their skills to make sure that everybody from, let's say, a tier 2, tier 3 city tries to become a creator on their platforms. The only thing that I feel lacking is the diversity of categories, though. If you look at the current state of things, you have technology as a huge domain, you have gaming as a huge domain, you have comedy as a huge domain, and you have fashion as a huge domain, right? Anything, and fitness as well. So anything that has a product that is attached to it is a huge domain, except for comedy. But domains like culture and history, they don't see a lot of creators because they don't get paid that much. That's the sad part. If you're, let's say, a history influencer or a cultural influencer on Instagram, even if you have, let's say, 2 million followers, nobody's going to pay you to do anything. Can't earn money for a lakh meme, can you? So that's where our platform comes into play, wherein we say, hey, what you're doing is amazing. The kind of stories that you tell there, I mean, there's something that needs global audience. Come tell the stories with us. We'll make sure that you get paid.
Get paid. Get paid for doing what you love. It's important. Yeah. In terms of the app, then you mentioned gamification. In terms of innovation, what else is innovative about this app then?
So the app is very rudimentary right now. We just wanted to get something out in the market. We did it last Wednesday, by the way. So the app got launched last Wednesday, and just out in the market because we want to listen to feedback. We want to share it with a certain set of closed testers and get their inputs on. There are a lot of features that we want to go live, right? So there are a lot of features that we have from the perspective of accessibility, from the perspective of discoverability in terms of stories. And that is what the aim is. We want to make sure that, okay, so what I'm going to say next is very counterintuitive for a founder. We're not planning on building for the next billion users. Okay, we're not. What we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever we build, even if the highest number of users that it ever achieves is, let's say, 30 million, right? It becomes something that is indisposable for those 30 million users. We don't want to acquire 100 million users and then out of these 100 million users, nobody cares about the app 6 months later. We want to make sure that even if you're able to acquire, let's say, only 10 million users or a million users for that matter, let's say, these million users open the platform on a day-on-day basis, read stories, comment on the stories, share it with their friends, and just love the platform and probably end up contributing to the platform as well. So in the end, the entire goal of the application, the goal of the Android and the future iOS app that we're going to release is to make that community even stronger. And it's very similar to what Reddit does, right? Not from the storytelling standpoint, but from the community standpoint.
Yeah.
Reddit in itself is a community-driven thing. If Reddit disappears, it's not that there's going to be a dearth of intellect on the internet, but it's that community is going to be damn sad. They're going to be, they're going to be lost. A lot of people are going to be lost, by the way. So that's what we want to build. We want to build that community of culture globally for that matter.
In terms of metrics, then, what's the most important metric to you? When you wake up in the morning, obviously check the apps is still working. What kind of metrics do you work? How are you measuring success?
We're measuring success specifically by trying to know how many people read how many stories,
right?
And if a story is supposed to be, let's say, 2.5 minutes read, right? How many people dropped off in between?
Right.
Because we want to understand what makes culture click in terms of storytelling. And because every category is fascinating for somebody. And finding that somebody is easy. What's hard is to make it fascinating for somebody else. And it all boils down to storytelling. There's nothing else. There is nothing else that is going to make something accessible if not storytelling. It's the same with fundraise as well, right? If you're not able to tell your story, then nobody's going to put any marketing or any dollars behind you, right? It's as simple as that.
What's your favorite story then?
I have so many. Okay, I'll tell you one. So what happened? So there was Battle of Plassey, right? So Battle of Plassey was when Robert Clive fought against Sirajuddaula and kind of changed the entire tide for India back in 1700s, right? So what happened was Robert Clive had a tactic. He used to attack early morning, like very early morning. He wouldn't wait for daylight or anything of that sort. So when he attacked, he had around, 4,000 odd troops. And Sirajuddaula had around 30,000 odd troops. And he attacked and it was a mayhem, right? Robert Clive did not understand what happened. It was foggy, it was humid, and it was rainy. And Sirajuddaula also did not understand what happened. Robert Clive lost, I think, almost 70% of his troops. And at the end of the skirmish, Robert Clive goes back to his tent and he's like, "We've lost. I mean, this was a huge mistake for me." But what had happened in all of that confusion was that a cannonball went very close, went by Sirajuddaulla's tent very closely. And Sirajuddaulah thought, I'm going to die. So he fled.
Okay.
And that's when that's how the tides changed. There was Robert Clive sitting in his tent thinking that he lost.
Yeah.
And Sirajuddaulah just fled. The moment he fled, Robert Clive, just marched on. And that's how East India Company, kind of took over India. Yeah,
Right.
that's a very fascinating story,
Yeah,
though.
I didn't know that one.
Confusion. Yeah, it is very fascinating. And there's so many such stories out there. You know how many Ramayans there are? Around 300 odd different versions of Ramayans are out there.
Yeah.
This is a very controversial topic, but then there are so many different versions of Ramayana out there. Every tribe has its own version of Ramayana. So have you read Ramayana or watched it, by the way?
I haven't, no. Unfortunately, no. Not yet.
So, but you do understand, right?
Yeah.
Sita had to go through the Agni Pariksha and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a specific there's a version of Ramayana called Gondi Ramayana, which is from the tribes of Gond. And in that, Lakshman goes through the Agni Pariksha, not Sita. So that's how vast culture is. You have one story and then let's say 1,000 odd variations of that one particular story. And each one of those variations is exciting and interesting. So
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about your background.
I graduated in 2014 from Delhi College of Engineering. So I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I was into robotics a lot, by the way.
Okay.
Then I don't know what happened. So shifted away from robotics into product management because I realized that my forte, or rather my interests, were towards solving problems, larger product problems, right, for people. So joined a startup, met Chetan there, moved away from that startup, joined a large company called ZS Associates. It's a marketing and sales consultancy. Stayed there for 8 months. Couldn't really fit in because the work was very ops oriented. But a great company though. Then I joined a company called Bazinga Box, which was a startup around subscription boxes for kids. So we used to make products that goes out. Products used to go out every month. Kids used to play with it. Soft motor skills, hard motor skills, and all of that. I headed the business there and then moved back to Delhi to start a company called Statue Technologies with Chetan and a couple of other co-founders. So that was a core AI firm. It still runs. Amazing set of folks, amazing set of business. It's an enterprise software company which provides AI solutions to both public and private organizations.
Okay.
And also to government organizations, right? So a lot of automation, a lot of hardcore AI research problems getting solved. And in 2020, so I built the entire business there, scaled up the enterprise domain, built in partnerships with Microsoft and Google for enterprise sales and all of that. And then in 2020, after the pandemic hit, I think it happened with everybody in the world, though. Everybody started relooking at their lives after the pandemic hit, right? So I did the same, Chetan did the same, and we decided that, okay, we've done this for a while now. We've built products for enterprises for over 5 years, been successful, moderately successful there. So why not do something around culture? And that's how we, just decided to hand over the firm or reins of the firm to our other co-founders. And then we just decided to take the plunge. And this was, mid-pandemic, by the way. It's like no idea what's going to happen in future, but let's just do it.
Yeah. What was the first, when you first met your founder, what were your first impressions?
I was very fat, actually. I was 110 kgs back then. And he is around 56 kgs. So I was like, that's a tiny guy. So that was that. But then over a period of time, I realized how dedicated he is towards technology. And he's the kind of guy who, he'll learn any technology as long as it solves the problem. He's not a believer of being an extremely good, let's say, coder in a particular language. What he believes in is that if a particular problem needs a different approach, then why not just learn the approach? So that's what fascinates me about Chetan. And the fact that he can tell stories. So.
You said you started off as a product manager. Any tips for being a product manager in a startup?
What I would suggest is look at the bigger picture while not losing sight of what needs to be delivered tomorrow. And it's a very difficult skill to master. So when you look at the bigger picture, you end up understanding the value of everything that gets done right now. So it gives you that motivation. But if you lose sight of what needs to be delivered tomorrow, then that bigger picture never gets complete. So from an advice standpoint, for a product manager, understanding why a particular thing is being built and how it fits in with the larger product is extremely important. But it's also very important to understand what is the hardcore limit of a person when it comes to building, because a product manager doesn't code. A product manager understands the people who are coding, right? So if you lose sight of that, then the product is lost. I've made that mistake in the past, so I know.
And you talked about funding, raising $1 million seed. Talk about that process. Was that a tough process?
That was initially, for the first month, it was tough because as I said, a lot of investors said this is not cool enough, and we were like, okay. But then we met a couple of people, right? So we met Rohit Bansal and Kunal Bell from Snapdeal, Titan Capital, and those guys. Having a chat with those people, it kind of boosted our confidence a lot, because Kunal is fascinated by history, and call was over an hour long, and then that was a great talk that we had with them. Massive respect for them. And then we met our other set of investors as well, and each one of the. So thing is, everybody who said no to us spent around almost an hour and a half with us, understanding our business model, product, and everything, and then they ended up saying no. Everybody who said yes to us never took more than 45 minutes to make the decision. And that's the kind of investors that we have on board. People who are, extremely passionate about the domain that we are entering into, because this is a domain that has no other players. And yeah, the process was extremely grueling to a large extent, but it was fun.
Is it pressure on or pressure off now? Now you've raised this.
Oh, pressure on every day. I don't think I'll have to retire to get the pressure off, but then yeah. But it's fun though. Because you're trying to build something, and having a set of investors who are interested in your idea and following you closely gives you those targets, gives you that additional motivation, and also push to meet those targets and to build the best possible set of products that you can. So that's always. I'm always thankful to those people. So
what kind of targets have you set yourself?
We want to launch all of these podcasts in the future. We want to have audio stories on the platform as well. In addition to that, we also want to get at least 1 million monthly active users in the next couple of months, so on and so forth. A couple of gamification things that we need to take live. So those are kind of targets that we have. There are a lot more detailed ones, but then not at a liberty to share right now, because some of them are very revolutionary.
Right. So. And how are you sort of marketing that app? Then how are you getting customers to download the app or try the app?
As I said, right now it's just word of mouth.
Yeah.
But we are going to participate and partner with a lot of organizations to do this, because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has a culture to promote. So we're going to make sure that there is that synergy that we build across businesses. And we are not very big fans of spending a lot of money for user acquisition. So we just want to make sure that we are as sustainable as possible and as frugal as possible.
Are you able to talk about hiring?
See, so Chetan, when he takes an interview, right? So his interviews are never less than an hour long. Never. Mm-hmm. And even if he's hiring a coder or somebody who's in the software field, he's not going to ask coding questions, because a person who has a decent enough aptitude will end up learning any language that is thrown at the person, right? It's very simple. So his discussions are always around fun, their family, what drives them and motivates them, and that kind of. When I hire people, I have never had an interview, which is very rare cases though. Most of my rounds go for around 20, max 25 minutes. That's it. If there is somebody who's and everybody that we've hired till late, I've had a conversation for more than 50 minutes. So that's the thing. If the person is fascinating enough that you can work with the person for the next 3 years without, just losing hope, then we hire that person. because it's an industry right now where money doesn't matter. Even if you offer the person, let's say, an X amount of dollars, there's somebody else who's going to offer him X plus X.
Yeah, true.
Right. There's always the amounts of the funds that people have raised is mind-boggling, right? So Chetan and I, we cannot offer the highest salary. What we can offer is a culture and is fun while they build products which are innovative in nature. So in order to kind of gauge that scale or gauge that skill inside that person, that's what we look for. If the person is going to be, motivated only by money, if yes, then we're probably not the right organization for the person. It's not wrong though. It's perfectly fine for the person to be motivated by money. It's very important as well. But we're probably not the right organization.
Interesting stuff. Last few questions then. Any advice for our first-time founders? What should they be focused on? Obviously, you've done 7 years, 3 startups.
First-time founders, what I suggest is get the product out in the market as soon as possible. It's a very generic suggestion, but it's very true. Get it out in the market so that there is no better judge of the product than the market itself. You would have advisors, you would have people coming in saying that, okay, what you're doing, you should be doing it in another way, X, Y, Z things. But then unless you actually hear it from your customers, or could be a single end user, don't take that advice. The other thing is raising funds is very difficult. So if you're thinking of raising funds, just make sure that there's somebody else taking care of the business while you raise funds. Mm-hmm. If you think that you can take care of the business and raise funds at the same time, then you must be damn good. That's two pieces of advice for every founder, every first-time founder.
Yeah. Would you change anything on your entrepreneurial journey so far? Would you change anything?
No, actually.
No.
I would not.
Definitely not, no.
Because everything that I've done, every mistake that I've made, I've actually learned from it a lot. And if you were to remove certain things from it, then I don't think I would be where I am right now. Plus, we're also a history startup, so we understand trying to change the past doesn't work out well for anyone. So.
Yeah, true. Any pitching advice? Because obviously you've successfully raised some money, so you must have gone well.
It's actually not how you pitch though. It is not how you pitch. It is a combination of luck. It is a combination of how that day is going for you. It is a combination of how that day is going for the investor. It doesn't matter how well you pitch. It just doesn't. You could be an amazing speaker. You could be an amazing storyteller. And if that investor is having a bad day, you're not going to be able to raise funds. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. It is the hard truth, though. I mean, you could have contradictory advices coming from other people, but that is the hard truth. Mm-hmm. It is not just on how good you are when it comes to pitching. It's a mixed bag of factors which affect your fundraise. And this is for all founders out there. If you're not able to raise funds, it's not a bad. There are a lot of companies who have grown without funds, but of course, funds are very important. If you're rich, then it's a different story altogether. But if you're not, funds are extremely important. But if you don't get a commitment from a particular investor, don't get disheartened. There are X number of founders out there. There are an equally high number of VCs and investors out there as well.
Actually, what advice would you give to someone who wants to do something similar in the creator culture economy then? Obviously, you said it was a niche, so come on, give us some advice.
Build a community first. Mm-hmm. Before launching the product, Chetan and I, we had experience of our GTM, we had experience of partnerships and building products fast. So we were able to do what we were able to do. So if you remove that experience, if you remove that that network from ourselves, then we would rather focus on the community, because the growth is going to be slower, but it's going to be much more sustainable as well. So build a community, start with, let's say, a city, build a community of storytellers from that city, and then grow and expand from that city itself.
Awesome advice, that one. Last question then, for people who want more information on you and on what you're building, what must they do? How do they connect?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can drop me an email. My email is pretty straightforward, suwmit@ekank.com. And just drop me a message on LinkedIn. I try to reply to every message that I get. Always happy to chat.
Awesome. Summit, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Thanks a lot for having me. And look forward to chatting with you in the future as well.
Yeah, let's definitely keep in touch. Next time I'm in India, I'll have to drop in and say hello to you. Definitely.
Oh, sure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to Summit for coming on the show today. Check out ekank.com for more information. And thank you for supporting the podcast. And let's connect on Twitter @IndianStartupSH and Facebook.com/Indian Chat Show. Thank you and goodbye.